Hi, in this lecture you will learn how to use the where_current_of class. In the previous lecture we saw how to use the forUpdate class and said that we use forUpdate class to lock the rows to protect against any change by the other users. But this is not the only function of forUpdate class. If we use the forUpdate class, the main goal of us is not just locking it. We lock it because we want to update or delete some rows from the selected query. As we exampled, if we are calculating the salaries, we update them after the calculation. So the main goal is updating these rows. Because of that, we don't want anybody to change it. In addition to the forUpdate class, now I will explain you something that will make your code faster. I mean, make your updates and deletes much faster. As you understand from the name of the lecture, it is where_current_of class. Where_current_of class is used together with the forUpdate class. Do not forget that. Now, let me explain the subjects on an example. First, let's select from the employees table. Select all the columns from employees where department ID is equal to, let's say, 30. Let's run it. As we can see, all the salaries finish with double zeros. By the way, I generally use the copy tables while updating some columns. But since there is no primary key or indexes on the copy tables, sometimes I need to use the actual tables. And I do some updates, delete, etc. But I roll back them after finishing my job. So be careful on rollbacking them. Otherwise, your data will be different and you may have some different results in your next examples. So try to do exactly what I do on inserts, updates, or deletes. Great. Now let's start coding. Let's first create a cursor with the forUpdate class. Declare cursor c_amps is select all the columns from employees and our where class department ID is equal to 30 for update and our begin keyword. Let's type a for in clause. For r_amps in c_amps loop. Now, normally, how do we do the update? We do that with using the primary key. Since employee ID is the primary key, we do that with the employee ID column. So let's do the update. Update employees set salary is equal to salary plus, let's say, 60. And our where class where employee ID is equal to r_amps dot employee ID. And loop and our end keyword. Great. Now let's run it. And select the table again. As we can see, we updated the columns with using the cursor. But how did it do that? It updated with the primary key. So in each update, we went to the SQL engine, searched the related employee ID with the primary key index, and then did the update. Since we use the primary key index, it is fast. But what if I say there is a faster way? Even if we use the primary key index, it first gets the related row from the index, then gets the row ID from the column, then does the update. What if we find the row ID directly without going to an index? Is there a way like that? Yes, let me show you. Select row ID, comma employees dot star from the employees table. We know that we cannot use row ID, comma star directly. If we use star sign with the column name together, we need to write the alias before the star sign. If you don't want to write the alias, you can write the table name. You know that from the SQL lessons. Now let's run the select query. As we can see, these are the ID of the rows in the database. With these rows, the database can find the rows much faster. Especially if you do not use the primary key, it will be pretty much faster. So how do we use the row IDs then? It's by using the where_current_of class. When we use a cursor with the forUpdate clause, the cursor returns the rows with their row IDs. Then we can use the row IDs with using the whereCurrentOf clause. But do not forget, we need to use forUpdate clause and whereCurrentOf clause together. Otherwise, it won't work. Now, let's use our whereCurrentOf clause. I simply delete the where clause and write current of C_amps. whereCurrentOf clause and the cursor name. With this way, the PL/SQL engine sends the update command with the row IDs of the row. So it will be pretty fast. We can use whereCurrentOf clause with the delete commands too. It's the same. But even if we delete a row, we need to use the forUpdate clause too, because whereCurrentOf works together with the forUpdate clause. Now let's run it. And run the select query. As we can see, we could do our update. Great. So when we use whereCurrentOf clause, we use that when we want to make some operations and do some updates or deletes one by one. This will be the fastest way on doing that. Actually, since our table is pretty small, it is hard to show you the performance. But if you have a big table in your work, you can test it. One last thing. If you realized, I used only one table in our cursor select query. But this has a meaning, because we cannot use whereCurrentOf clause with joins, group functions, etc. If you do that, this code will not work. The reason is, if you use group functions, there is no row ID in the result set. Or if you join with another table, it cannot decide which one's row ID to get. Now, let's simply use a join operation and see what happens. But first, let's check the first salary to test after the update. This is the value of our first salary. Now let's change our code then. Select e.star from employees E and departments D and our where clause. Let me copy that. E.department ID is equal to D.department ID, and we need to write and in here. Now let's run it. Column ambiguously defined, so I need to write, I think, E.department ID in here, and let's clear up and run our code again. It seems it worked. Now let's check the salaries then. Even it seemed it worked, it did not update the row. Whatever we write inside of our select clause, the update will not work successfully because we used a join. If you really need to use a join, you can do that without using the whereCurrentOf clause. You can do that with selecting the row ID in your select query, then fetch it into some variables or records, then do the update with using them. Let me show you. E.rowID, comma, let's say salary. Now let's change the where clause of the update, where row ID is equal to r_amps.row ID. Let's check the salary again first and run the block and run the select query again. As we can see, we did that. This also can be used instead of the whereCurrentOf clause, but it will need more typing in other loop structures because you will need to fetch the row ID into some variables first, then use that. But with whereCurrentOf clause, you don't need to do that. So if you can use whereCurrentOf clause, I recommend you to use it. But do not forget, if you use it, since you used the forUpdate clause, the rows will all be locked against any other users. Great. Now we know that using row ID column will make our updates and deletes faster. And whereCurrentOf clause makes that so easy. If you join with multiple tables, we can handle that with selecting the row ID column, but if there is only one table, whereCurrentOf clause will be easier to code. So this is the end of this lecture. See you in the next lectures.